Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zobrio University's webinar on making FE reports work for you. Today, we have Crystal Haggerty, a senior application consultant here at Zobrio, to lead the webinar. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll go over all questions at the end. Thank you. I'll now hand it over to Crystal.
Thank you, Colleen. Welcome, everyone. As Colleen said, my name is Crystal Haggerty, and we're going to look at financial edge reports today and looking at how to make them work a little bit more for you, or at least walk through the basic parts of it so we can start to see how the reports can be used in multiple ways. First, whenever I think about reports is sort of defining the parameters. So it's kind of asking what the who, what, why, how, or why, who, what, how. The way I see it is before you start any procedure in Razor's Edge where you're going to be running a report, building a query, maybe doing an export, is sort of step it out for yourself. Why am I building this? Who needs it? What's it got, should it have in it? And how does it need to look? So kind of start with those questions for yourself. It really does help when you're going into reports to kind of have something ahead of time, like, oh, I've been asked to build an income statement and it's going to the executive director. And they want to see the account numbers and the actuals. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to run it through Razor's Edge and I'm going to export it into a PDF. We're kind of looking at, like, I like to say, the who, what, why, how, or the why, who, what, how. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at Financial Edge within the database view, and then I'm going to move over to the web-based view. Probably most of you at some point have seen the database view, although if you're brand new to Financial Edge or within just the last couple of years, you might be using just the web view. The database view gives us a little more functionality, especially for database administrators. They can kind of come in and do a lot of little behind the scene things, but the web-based view can give you just as much information and can work for you just as well as the database view. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and taking a look at Financial Edge. All right, I'm kind of stepping through just the first piece here as we're looking through. So first you want to look at a report and figure out what exactly are we going to look to create or build.
Hey, Crystal, I think we're still seeing your PowerPoint.
Thank you. There we are. How about this? Even better, right? Into the actual Razor's Edge. Thank you so much. All right. So within the Razor's Edge, there's a variety of reports. We've got all these different report categories to choose from. Within each category, there's a grouping of reports. I'm going to stay within the financial reports because we tend to use those the most. And another ones that I might like to look at, just a little tips and tricks, places to go. You might be looking at account reports to get your full chart of accounts, or maybe your trial balance. Go with financial to start. Now, first thing I'm going to do when you're looking at a report is you want to go ahead and this column here, you can just double click on the type of report. You can click on it and click new. If you have one already built, you can double click on it. So I did a quick little one down here before class, just so we could take a look at some pieces and think through the process. Now, each report has tabs, and these are all your data parameters. This is where you're going to decide exactly what information you want to have in your report. The general tab, I always think of that as my base, my foundation. This is where I'm letting the system know, look, I'm looking at all of the pieces that come in my income statement, and I can make a couple of choices. So the first thing here is to use the chart template. You've probably seen this. Most of you probably know. Maybe you're new and you're not quite sure what this is. I'm going to go take a look at this in a little bit. We're going to walk through these tabs first, and then I'll step over into what we call our visual chart organizer and just give you a little preview of that before we then move back into the actual reporting. So with the general tab, it knows it's automatically looking for accounts, and we can make decisions here. Do we want to include accounts with zero balances? Do we want to include inactive accounts? Just depends on what information you need to store in your report and share with whomever's requesting the report from you. You can also at this point choose your design as far as if you want it in portrait or landscape. This is more, I think of this as a format piece, but it's here on the general tab. One thing you'll notice through the reports, most of them are very similar. Every now and then there'll be one piece you might actually find report orientation over in format, but pretty much every tab is very similar in every single report. The next tab over is filters, and this is where we can further define our group of records. So on the general tab, we're really getting everyone. And again, I'm going to come back to these BCOs, these report templates, these chart templates for you and explain that. But really what it's doing is it's pulling all of your accounts in. Then on the filter tab, I can further define everyone. So something to think about is if you start with this report, you build it out the way you like it, but the only thing that's changing are the account codes that you want to use. You don't need to keep rebuilding the report. You can choose to do that. You can have multiples of the same ones that look at just specific accounts, or you can use one report and just come in and filter and change on the different accounts, funds, projects, any of the pieces that you want to narrow down your report to get exactly what you want. So from any of these areas, you'll see that there's a drop down. Include all is every single thing that you see in the filters, and then selected gives you this opportunity to then choose the actual accounts that you want to see. You can click all again, which is kind of funny. Selected, I pick each different one. So as I click down here, I get the binoculars. And from here, I can say, I want to add this account, another account, whichever additional pieces. I was like, oh, it's going to spin and spin. Where'd you go? There we go. Well, my little sample database has been trucking really hard for the last few weeks. And so it's giving me a little bit of a, it doesn't want to, it's a little cranky right now. Okay. Oh, and I closed it, that's why. So when you click the binoculars, you can go through and say, I want to add additional accounts. I like this report, but I need another couple of pieces in here. You just double click on any of the lines that you see. You can also search for any of them. So instead of scrolling down, go ahead and use the search area and find the account that you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this one for right now. Or you can do a range. So a range will give you the opportunity to say from one account to another. So if you know you're looking at all of your liabilities, you want to just pull those in, you can go ahead and do that. You can just pick a range, whichever is going to work easier for you. The next tab over is columns. So within columns, this is how we're kind of designing the look of our report with the information that we want to see. It automatically, in any new report, will default and automatically add in your account number or your description number, if that's the most, description or account number or description, if that's what's going to be contained in your report. So there's always a default here of, I know these pieces are coming in no matter what. The next one below, this is where you can start adding additional columns to your report. This one's highlighted here. I can either double click on it or hit open. I'll just take a look at this. So from here, it's further filtering down my group of records and giving me the information that I want to see in my report. So this is going to show me my balance as of a specific date. From here, you can add in any of the column headings that are down here. If you click it, it'll jump up in here. So we got balance up here. And then we can add in dates. Your column width, you might need to change it. This is someplace you might have to go toggle back and forth a little bit as you build out your report. I know when I first started doing them, I added a lot of extra information. So I'd have to come in and see if I could squish it together. If not, sometimes I had to do 2 reports. We can also filter here on a date range. Right now I'm in our sample database, so I'm using 2012 because I know that there's information in here for sure. But I can further simplify, I can further drill down on the group of records that I'm looking for. And this last tab, filters, just like the filters that you saw before, but this is filtering only on, I'm going to click OK here, only on this single heading line. So it's only filtering this group. You can add in a new column. You can repeat the column. So if I repeated the column, it automatically adds the exact same information below. So if you're comparing 2 time periods, you might want to just repeat your column so you don't have to build all your pieces out again. And then fix your date ranges or filter further on the group of records that you're choosing to see. I'm going to go ahead and cancel here. Your multiple column headings, this is just the top part of your rows. So you put your heading information, what you want to call it, and you let the system know where the column should start and end your heading. So it's looking back at this tab and putting a header on top of these two, if that's what you choose, or on all four. You can just decide how you want it to be, what you wanted to call it. And I'm just going to write heading. And you can let the system know, I want this over columns 2 and 3, and how I'd like it aligned. Now in the Format tab, there's always a little information here that I always recommend to all of our clients. Don't forget the Format tab. Format, as we all think about it, is how do I want things to look? And that is a big part of this. So for our headings here, we can add information, what's the title of our report, our subtitle, pages if we want to see that. Criteria, if you click this little button here, you can actually print a criteria page. And what this will do is show you all the information that you picked throughout your columns, throughout your tabs within your report. It'll tell you everything that you just decided on. And sometimes that's helpful, especially if you're giving the report to someone else who might then need to go in and maybe they're going to do a file save as up here and build on your report, or they want to make a few changes because they realize, oh, let's take these two pieces out. So it's always kind of helpful. Or if somebody says, I'm not sure why this is in here, you look and say, oh, I did a range. That's how that account got in there. Let me go in and make that change. Now, under detail, this is why I would let everybody say, there might be something that's important here in Format that you won't actually expect to be here. So the detail lets us know a few more pieces of information about the group of records that are going to be pulled into our report. So do we want to indent totals? That's fine. But do we want to print change in fund balance? Do we want to print fund balance on an encumbrance or a separate line? How do we want to calculate the surplus or deficit? And we're going to calculate the budget on closing accounts based on all accounts. But we could say based on income statement accounts only or fund balance accounts. So it's always good to go into the detail area and take a look. Sort just says, I want to have a separate sheet for each fund. I can decide if I want to sort it by detail by account. Maybe I want it to be detail by account and characteristic. It just lets me know how, when I'm looking at this report, I'd like to see it. I can further go down. There's additional formatting through here. I can sort it by just an account code and start from that account code and do an ascending fund code and do it ascending number-wise. Page footer, you could add some text at the bottom of your report. Report footer, text at the bottom of your report. In the miscellaneous, this will let you choose how you want to see your numbers formatted. Do you want a negative amount in parentheses, or do you want it to have a negative in front of it? Just let you know how you'd like to see it. And then a color scheme. It's always fun to add color to a report, not always necessary. Now, as I said, all the tabs that you see here are very similar in whichever report you want to run. Due to time, I'm going to click preview, but if it starts to spin too much, I don't want to take up too much more time in this, and I want to move on to a couple other things while you're here with me. One of the things there we go. So now we can take a look and see if this is what we want, if we need to make any changes, how we want, what our heading would really be. Do we want it over here? And try to format and make the report work for all of us. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now, I want to talk about the VCO really quickly. Now, a VCO is what Blackbaud calls the visual chart organizer. The visual chart organizer kind of steps out how you want to group your report prior to pulling in your reports. I know it gets a little funky through here, but it's a very important piece that once it's built, you pretty much don't have to keep coming in and building them again. But you may have seen this and kind of thought to yourself, okay, what is this chart template and what's this level piece? So I'm going to show you what this is and give you a better idea. We'll say no. I could save this, but we don't need to save it for this right now. Now, in the visual chart organizer, let's just get a simple one here. I'm going to just open up a default. What the visual chart organizer does is it takes and thinks through all of your pieces of your accounts and liabilities funds, all of your revenue, expenses, puts everything together, and this is that base. Remember, the general tab is your base of records. Well, the first part of that general tab was your VCO, your chart report, and this is where it's coming from. Those numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, it lets the system know, do you only want to see information up to 2, or do you want to see information up to 3? And if there was 4, do you want to see it up to 4? And you can go all the way up to 10. You can add details in here. Now, most everyone should have a default one in their system, and I'm sure people have created other ones. Something that's kind of fun to do, and we can cover this in another session, is just kind of look through your stuff. When you're on anything, up here at the top left for the visual chart organizer, it says account view. If you click that, then you can kind of see it's showing us all the information that's in there, just the way it was stepped out in the design view. So this is a little more advanced when you're building reports, is to build a VCO, but it's always good to know this is where it's coming from and to kind of understand the different levels of information that you can choose within the reports. I'm going to close that and go back to our reports for a second here. So all the different reports that we have, like I said, I just want to open up another one. Let's get an account report for a moment. Let's trial balance. Try a trial balance. Just to have that little tip and trick, remember, almost everything kind of has the same sort of pieces to it. Now, not all of the reports have the visual chart organizer, but it's still the same concept. It's starting with your report format. This one has your dates here. It's starting with your base of records. Then on your filters tab, you're going to further filter down, and then format, always make sure to check that detail, miscellaneous, those little extra areas. And remember, for each report, if you have to build this one out, but you need it for different periods, you don't have to build the same report multiple times. You can just come in, change the date parameters, change any of your filters, and run the report again. If you want to have more than one, you're more than welcome to do that by just coming up and doing a file save as for each of your different reports based on date ranges, or again, on any filters that you've used. Now, for those of you who have used the FE database view, all of this looks really familiar. Maybe now you're moving over to NXT and things look a little bit different. Well, let's start with there for a sec. So we know in database view, we're tabbing through tab, 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 right? Each of those little areas has something that we need to look at, filter on, make a change to. This is how we're defining our report parameters. The general, as I said, is the foundation, your filters, columns, headings, and format. Now, how do we create the same kind of reports within the web view? There's no tabs in the web view, but don't worry, everything is still there. It just looks a little different. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the web view, share that with all of you. Now, here we are in the web view. You can change your accounts here, but under General Ledger, this is where that chart organizer is, that visual chart organizer that we saw before. They can actually be built within the web view. So it doesn't all have to be built over in our database view. I'm just clicking on a template here so you can take a look. And it just looks a little different, but it still carries and holds the same information. See, it's still stepping through. So this would be, level 1, 2, 3. It's still stepping, actually no text, that's text, so that's 3. So it's still stepping through the pieces, just like the one in the database view was. I'm going to close that for a second. Close time. Now I'm going to go ahead, look over in reports. The reports that are in the database view, all of them are still here, except instead of having the columns that say, I'm going to go into financial reports, I'm going to go into account reports, you can do that all here just by clicking add on the left-hand side here and drop down. These are all the report types. So instead of breaking them out into separate sections, they're all together. Once you go through and pick your report, I'm going to grab one that we've already done. Really quick here. Everything that was, and I know I keep saying this, You're like, she's going to say it again. Everything that's in database view is really all in NXT in our web-based view. Things are just in a little different place. So our headings, remember, we could put our heading in the format tab. It's the first thing we see now. This, for me, I started thinking when I saw this, because I'd been using WebView or database view for a very long time, not really comfortable in that. And when I looked at this, I thought, where's my stuff? But then this actually makes a lot more sense to me. You're thinking about a report, right? First, what's my heading? What am I going to call it? What information do I want to see? What was my date range? How do I want it aligned? On the general tab, this is where I grab that VCO, that chart template. So I can drop down, pick any of the ones that have already been built. As you can see in our sample, we like to play a lot with our VCOs. Under content, this is the same as the columns tab. So I can decide what information I want to see. So at first, I'm going to see, I'm going to edit columns. So my first column, it's got my heading. The second one, I'm going to open up here. This is actual, so it's like that third column we saw in the database view. I can add dates. I can add my filters. So filters, same thing. I can filter on funds, account codes, projects. I can decide how I want to see my currency. If I drop down here to filters, I can further define my group of records. So do I want to take off inactive accounts, accounts with zero balances? Do I want to add another filter? I can do that as well. Format, how I want it to look. Sort, how I want it to be organized. I can add a sort field. I want it by funds in ascending order. I want it by account code in ascending order. How I want my numbers formatted, and then a footer on the end of the report. One thing I always encourage everyone to do is go through what you have. Let me come back here for a moment. I'm going to share. I'm going to go back to our database view for a minute. If you're working in database view, one thing I've always recommended to my clients and anybody that I've worked with that are using any of the Blackbaud systems, to go through and take a look at where your information is stored. The more comfortable you are knowing, here's my records, these are my accounts. I know when I look at an account record where information is within this account. These things start to kind of come together when you're building out reports or you're building a query or you're exporting information out. If you know where the data is stored, it makes it easier. Also, remember that with everything that you have, with all your reports, you don't have to start from scratch. There might be somebody who was there before you who built a great report, and you can just take it, do a file save as if you want to keep the original one, and just make a few changes in those parameters. Look at your filters, look at your dates. So again, same thing. All the stuff is still there. This is the web view. You've got your headings, general, content, filters, format, sort, number format, and footers. Everything is still there in every area. Little tips and tricks. I always try to do a file save as if I can. I don't want to always recreate the wheel. I don't always have time to recreate the wheel. So it's really great when we can share our reports with one another. Filter, all you have to do is change a couple of things. If it's just the date range on the report, just filter there. Walk through your records. Look at your system. Be kind of comfortable in it. I used to take, when I first learned these systems and was working in the field at a local nonprofit, I would get in the morning and I would open up my system, and that takes like 5 minutes to cruise around, because the more I understood where everything was held, everything seemed to come together. It was much easier when I was processing the data. And another thing, you can't break the financial edge. So have fun, play in your system. Not the data entry, that's a little different. We got to be really careful, right? Garbage in, garbage out. We got to protect our data. But running your report, creating a new VCO, playing in query, all of that stuff can happen all the time to get you more and more comfortable with your system. And so that gives you a little bit of, kind of a broad overview, but looking at our reports, how to make them work for you, how to make it a little bit easier for you.